the later stages of the Cold War, 1973 to 1991. In 1973, a new stage of the Cold War started. It started after the Vietnam War, and it was called Detente. The United States' prestige was very, very low, lower than ever before, and a lot of countries looked for a new kind of understanding. That year there was a conference to improve cooperation between the two blocs. It was the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe, and produced the Helsinki Accords, signed by 35 countries.
Spanning the region from Vancouver to Vladivostok, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe promotes security in 56 states in North America, Europe, the South Caucasus and Central Asia. The OSCE's roots go back to the 1975 Helsinki Final Act, a groundbreaking agreement reached through dialogue and consensus. The Helsinki Final Act challenged the politics and preconceived ideas of the Cold War. It set forth 10 principles to govern relations among states, focusing on cooperation and the peaceful settlement of disputes.
The Final Act acknowledged for the first time that building security requires a multifaceted approach. Threats stem not just from troops and from weapons, they also come from economic woes, they come from environmental degradations, they come from violations of human rights. The Final Act's inclusion of human rights proved especially faithful. It inspired political activists across Europe, and eventually it helped in the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Anyway, despite the Helsinki Accords, tensions between the blocs resumed because of the events of 1979, the Soviet-Afghan War. On 27th December, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to expand its influence in Western, Central and Southern Asia, and the Soviet-Afghan War started. The Soviet army fought for 9 years against insurgent groups called Mujahideen, backed by the United States, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan and the United Kingdom. By 1988, the Soviet Union started the troop withdrawal, leaving the government forces alone against the insurgents. The Nicaraguan Revolution. In Nicaragua, there was a revolution led by the FSLN, Frente Sandinista de Liberación Nacional, to overthrow the regime of the dictator Anastasio Somoza, to establish a left-wing regime. Both sides received help from the United States and the USSR respectively. The Iranian Revolution. In Iran, different Islamist and leftist organizations made a revolution against the king, the Shah, who was supported by the United States. The leader of the revolutionaries, the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, established an Islamic Republic, and then a period of hostility began between Iran and the United States until nowadays. And these 1979 events started an escalation. The USSR increased its nuclear arsenal by developing medium-range missiles, and the United States placed hundreds of medium-range missiles in Western Europe.
Ever since the Cuban Missile Crisis, we and the Soviets have been locked in an ever-escalating arms race that shows no sign of slowing and threatens our very existence. The Soviets are currently deploying their latest generation of intercontinental ballistic missiles and the deadly accurate SS-20. They build the new Typhoon-class nuclear submarine. We build the Ohio-class. The Soviets update their bombers, deploying the Backfire and the Blackjack, while we test the B-1 and equip our B-52s with cruise missiles. The spiraling arms race maintains as the status quo, a balance of terror. And though we and the Soviets regularly plead that we only seek peace, the buildup continues. This impotent policy is ironically called MAD, Mutual Assured destruction.
The United States President Ronald Reagan approved in 1981 a military program known as Star Wars. 4 years before, George Lucas had filmed the first Star Wars movie. Its real name was the Strategic Defense Initiative, and its Star Wars popular name was because it had the aim to develop an anti-missile system in space, capable of shooting down missiles.
If we utilize the extraordinary capabilities of the space shuttle to deploy the system known as High Frontier, America, for the first time, will be able to defend herself against a Soviet missile attack. High Frontier consists of 3 elements: 2 levels of orbiting satellites and a ground-based missile defense. The 2 satellite systems provide us with a network orbiting the entire Earth. They carry tracking and targeting computers and conventional non-nuclear missiles. The ground-based missile defense consists of small swarm jet rockets or new rapid-fire guns positioned around our silos. In the event of a nuclear attack, these 3 systems will be able to destroy at least 95% of all incoming Soviet missiles. When the network detects the launch of a Soviet ICBM, computers acquire the missile track and send interceptors to destroy the missile during its initial boost phase. Missiles that survive the boost phase encounter the more sophisticated second defense. This system has a more advanced tracking and targeting ability, which allows conventionally armed rockets to destroy a missile's multiple warheads. It could also use advanced technologies such as lasers to destroy multiple warheads as they coast through space. Finally, if any enemy warheads survive the space-borne systems, the ground-based missile defense fires a high-velocity salvo of small projectiles that destroy the warheads at a distance sufficient to protect our Minuteman silos.
The end of the Cold War. 1985 was the beginning of changes in the Soviet Union that led to its breakup. A new president was elected, Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev faced a lot of economic and political problems, especially political tensions with China and other Soviet republics. He started establishing closer relations with the United States and reformed political life to democratize the Communist Party. The presidents of the 2 superpowers met at the Geneva Summit in 1985 to discuss nuclear disarmament. They signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 1987, an agreement to eliminate intermediate range and shorter range missiles. In 2019, President Donald Trump withdrew unilaterally from this treaty, and 3 weeks later, the United States started testing this medium-range missile.
President Donald Trump says his country will exit the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. Trump was speaking to reporters after attending a rally in the U.S. state of Nevada. He accused Russia of violating the document, but without providing any evidence.
We'll have to develop those weapons. Unless Russia comes to us and China comes to us and they all come to us and they say, let's really get smart, and let's none of us develop those weapons. But if Russia's doing it, and if China's doing it, and we're adhering to the agreement, that's unacceptable.
Next step, easing tension between the 2 superpowers, was the signing of the START I treaty. It was in 1991, and it had the aim to reduce the number of intercontinental nuclear missiles. Also, other events were key to end the Cold War. Soviet troops withdrew from Afghanistan. The Berlin Wall came down in November 1989, and the next year Germany was reunified. The Warsaw Pact was dissolved in 1991, and finally the USSR broke up in 1991. On 25th December 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev resigned as president of the Soviet Union. It was the end of the Cold War.
Я покидаю свой пост с тревогой, но и с надеждой. С верой в вас, вашу мудрость.
After the Cold War, there was one winner, of course, the United States. They became the only one superpower. Nowadays, although the United States is the first superpower, is the first economy and the first military force in the earth, there is a multipolar world because China emerged and is now very, very powerful. Russia under Putin is getting stronger and stronger. So now we have a lot of different poles with different powers, and the relationships are difficult. Although we have only one first superpower, the threats that we were living under the Cold War still exist. There are bacteriological weapons, there are chemical weapons, there are, of course, atomic weapons, and everything is there. Perhaps nowadays it's more difficult than before to agree solutions, because before there were only two sides who were opposed, and they had to talk and to come to an agreement. Nowadays it's more difficult because there are a lot of different sides. China must agree with Russia and with the United States and Japan and Europe. Are our current leaders, our current world leaders, able to maintain peace?